Right, another day and another night of late night edition of MLS Matchweek previews. I think this is probably the fourth time this season that I'm doing this past 11 o'clock. And for those of you who wonder why I always do this late night is because usually I have something to do on Thursday, whether it's going to study or just go out to watch a movie, which I did today. I didn't watch Black Panther, by the way, but I did watch Pacific Rim Uprising. By the way, I actually have not watched the Black Panther movie yet. Certainly will watch that maybe in these next coming days. But yeah, it's time to get back into this. The international break is officially over, and thank goodness it is officially over. I mean, it was a very boring international break. The U.S. only played one game, and it was an international friendly against Paraguay, which I did watch that game, and we did win 1-0. It wasn't a exciting game whatsoever. And there were a couple of standout player in that U.S. team. Guys like Will Trapp and Tyler Adams did very well in that game against Paraguay. The only thing that I didn't like about that game, besides the quality of plays, and certainly the game wasn't very excited, is that I don't understand why Dave Sargent did not decide to put more of his youth player into the game. Like, it's an international friendly. This game means absolutely nothing to us. So why in the world are we not experimenting and putting more young guys and get them some national team experience? I mean, a lot of people complain about that, and I'm kind of one of those person. I just don't understand, and I'm really hoping that Saracen will get out of the U.S. men's national team as soon as possible, because he's clearly not the manager that we need for the U.S. men's national team. But either way, with that talk about the U.S. men's national team, let's actually talk about the league, and let's talk about all 11 games this week. As you can see, I kind of had to cramp it up because there's 11 games, which is the maximum number of games that you will see in an MLS season, because there's 23 teams. And the only team that will not be playing this week is FC Dallas. So, FC Dallas, congratulations. You get to receive a bye week after the international break. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not, but yeah, you get a bye week. You get to regroup after the international break, despite the fact that you did play a game in the international break. But yeah, there's going to be 11 games. There's actually going to be one game that is going to happen tomorrow, and that, of course, is this one. And then the rest is going to be happening on Saturday, and for the second week in a row, we're not going to have a Sunday game. So what that means is that I get to do the match preview, or not the preview, but the match week review show a little bit earlier, a day earlier, and I'm hopefully, I know I'm gonna go to this game. Hopefully I can, by the time I get home, I can maybe catch this one and this one, because this one is a 5 o'clock kickoff. It's a rare late afternoon kickoff that I go to a Quakes game. So yeah, get to catch the action a little bit later. But either way, let's actually get into this, and we start off with tomorrow's game. It's Toronto versus RSL. Let me just get out of the way so you guys can see a little bit better. So obviously the reason why this game is on Friday is because TFC has to play their CCL game on Tuesday against Club America. I really wish that the Red Bulls would have took this spot rather than TFC, because I feel like the Red Bulls, they should be playing in this one so that they can get even an extra rest, because they have to go on the road to Chivas Guadalajara. They had to go to Guadalajara to play their CCL game, while TFC had to play at home against Club Americas. So they shouldn't need a lot of rest, even though they're playing at home. There's just no travel involved in it. So it's kind of interesting that they decided to put TFC on that extra day rest. But TFC play against RSL. You know, TFC hasn't got a point yet this season, and as much as people kind of complain, and actually, this is actually wrong. I just realized this, and this was a big mistake that I just realized, and I'm also using pink marker. But yeah, TFC have not got a single point this year, and I know there's going to be people that's gonna panic the fact that why is TFC not got a point yet? Are they having their hangover from last season MLS Cup? Or they're having CCL hangover? Well, the CCL hangover is correct, but I feel like since they're coming into this year and they're kind of like balancing out these two competition, it's obviously going to be very, very hard. And the fact that, this TFC team, the fact that they haven't had a lot of rest during the winter kind of month where most teams get like 3 or 4 months, but this team only got like maybe 2 months of rest during the winter break. A couple of their squad is kind of a little bit tired, and I'm not going to worry about TFC just yet. Although one thing I will say about TFC is that certainly they don't want to fall behind very deep in that hole in these next couple of games, because TFC is already about 10 points behind NYCFC right now, and they're also, I think, 9 points behind Columbus, and actually no, they're not 9 points behind Columbus. They're also 10 points behind Columbus. Columbus and NYCFC has the same point total, and they're also 6 points behind Atlanta already. So they're already behind a lot of points earlier in the season. And granted, they do have 2 games in hand of both NYCFC and Toronto. They certainly want to start to pick up some points, even though they still have to kind of like balancing these two kind of competition that they're in. And as for RSL, it's gonna be very tough for them. I mean, they did get a much needed win against the Red Bulls 2 weeks ago, but that was not a very convincing win whatsoever for them. And I think coming into this game, Mike Petke's team is going to really struggle, because Western Conference team last season, whenever they go to BMO Field, they tend to always lose. So, yeah, I expect TFC to potentially win this, even though potentially they're not going to field the strongest squad, because RSL is just so far early in the season, they just don't look like a team that went on a really big run late in the season. And they also had a couple of injury to themselves too. So, yeah, I think TFC should probably win this one. But yeah, next up, Orlando City versus the Red Bulls. Orlando only have 1 point this season, and the Red Bulls, like I mentioned before, are playing against Chivas, as they will be playing them on Wednesday. And this is another thing that I will also say, is that I know the reason why they put TFC first is because they have to play on Tuesday, but I feel like, they're playing at home, and even though that means that they only get like a 3-day rest, and the Red Bulls will get like a 5-day rest since they're playing on Wednesday, they have to go on the road, and that travel usually take up a day of their time. So yeah, it's kind of interesting why they decided to put them on a Saturday date. But yeah, the Red Bulls, for probably the 4th time this year, actually not the 4th time, but the 5th time this year, Jesse Marsch has to start a pretty weak side and have to start a sort of New York Red Bulls 2 kind of side against Orlando City, because they have a midweek game against Chivas. And so far it has worked out pretty well for them. I mean, they look nothing more than exceptional, even though they're putting their B squad and not putting their strongest team. And if that is the case, then if they're doing well with just their B team, can you imagine when they actually have their starters back into this? I mean, that would be just amazing. I mean, this Red Bull team could really fly under the radar. And for Orlando City, I mean, I've been saying it for the last couple of weeks, but they need this win. I feel like this is an absolute must-win for Orlando City, and for the sake of Jason Christ's job security, if he does not win this, right, then there has to be a question of Jason Christ could potentially get fired in these next couple of games. And the other interesting fact about Orlando City coming into this game is that they're going to get most of their starters back into the squad after they suffer from some injury. Well, not starters, but the guys that they signed back from the starting 11 after they suffer an injury. So Coleman, guys like Sasha Kleshin. Well, actually, Sasha Kleshin has already got back. But yeah, they definitely have a lot of their guys back into the lineup. So there is just absolutely no excuse for Jason Kreis anymore. Talk about how they're suffering this injury crisis right now and that they're playing a little bit short-handed, when it's pretty clear that now they have guys back in to get themselves potentially back to being relevant where they should be this season. So it's going to be interesting to see how it's going to go. This could potentially be a draw, but for Orlando City and for Jason Kreis, they really hope that they get all 3 points from this. Next up, it's the most talked about games this week and probably the most talked about game this season alone, and that, of course, is the LA Derby, also known as El Tráfico. And honestly, I don't really like the name El Tráfico. It just sounds kind of weird. I mean, I get why they call it El Tráfico because, you know, LA is an area that is always known for traffic, and it is just an absolute nightmare. And I've been to LA a lot of times, and I can tell you that there's not one time where I actually travel from one place to another where there's not a point where I kind of had to slow down and kind of like stop for traffic. It is just that bad. Like, traffic in LA is basically 24/7 almost. Well, actually, I think that's a little bit harsh. I think there are going to be no traffic near the overnight hour, but usually in the daytime, there's always traffic. So I understand why they call it El Tráfico. Also, the fact that it probably would take you 2 hours to get from Carson to downtown Los Angeles. If that is kind of like the time for you to drive from one place to another because of traffic. So, yeah, I understand why they call it El Tráfico. Also, Zlatan could be making his debut in this game, and you know, that will be very, very interesting to see Zlatan play for the first time in MLS. I mean, I know a couple of people have already said that, you know, he's going to really be an impact and he potentially will find the MLS very easy. And actually, I heard an article that actually talked about this on MLSsoccer.com, and I actually read the article, and I don't understand what were they saying that Zlatan is going to find MLS very easy. I mean, I know he's going to be good in the MLS, but did you forget the fact that he is coming back from a serious knee injury and that he is now 36 years old and he does not look like the same Zlatan as he was a couple of years ago? So I don't see how in the world would you say that he finds this league going to be easy and he's going to just rip apart when he's coming back from this really terrible injury. So yeah, I feel like that is clearly not correct. I feel like Zlatan is going to find it a little bit difficult at first, but then once he gets going, then he'll of course start scoring goals and stuff like that. But just to simply say that he's going to find easy in the league just like straight away, that is not correct. He is going to find it pretty tough. But it's interesting to see if he's going to be in this game. And as for overall this game and just the overall picture, I mean, this is going to be interesting. I mean, LAFC has already proven a lot of doubters wrong with the fact that people thought that LAFC was going to get off to a pretty slow start, but they have now won their first 2 games, including a 5-1 beatdown against RSL. And the Galaxy also somehow, in some way, got a 0-0 draw in the last game against Vancouver. I mean, I don't know how in the world did they pull off that one with just pretty much their entire team getting depleted, and they were pretty much feeling a USL squad against Vancouver, and they still got a 0-0 draw on the road. So yeah, that's going to be certainly very interesting, and I think LA is definitely going to get some of their guys back in the lineup. So yeah, this is going to be a very, very good game. And if you are if even if you're not an MLS fan or just a soccer fan in general, I recommend you to watch this game because this is gonna live up to the hype. I feel like usually when games that is hyped up a lot, they kind of gets a little bit overhyped, but I feel like this one is not. I feel like this is gonna be a very interesting battle, especially if Zlatan is gonna be playing in this game. It's gonna be interesting to see how is he gonna adapt in MLS, and what are the LAFC defender gonna do about Zlatan when he's on the pitch. So I recommend you guys to watch this game. I'm definitely gonna watch this one, and this game is at 12 p.m. So there should be no excuse for anybody in the East Coast to not watch this game because it's a 3 o'clock kickoff, and it's also on Fox too. So you don't even need ESPN or Fox Sports 1 or whatever. It's on your local broadcast. So there should be no excuse for people that really want to watch this game. But they can't because they have cable and stuff like that. But either way, next up, Columbus versus the Whitecaps. Columbus beat DC United 3-1, while Vancouver drew to the Galaxy 0-0. And obviously, Columbus is one of those teams that is certainly have a lot of momentum. I mean, this team certainly is probably one of the kind of dark horse and kind of the under the radar team to start the season. I mean, this Columbus team, everybody thought that with Justin Miram and Ola Kamara leaving the team that this Columbus team could take a step back, but instead they took a step forward, and this is a really huge credit to Greg Berhalter of what he's doing at Columbus. And as for Vancouver, yeah, I mean, the 0-0 draw really sucked and really sting them because they were playing basically a USL LA Galaxy team, and they still couldn't get a result at home. And although Vancouver is a pretty good road team, and they can still, use their counter-attacking thing, which is, I think that is probably the reason why they're a good road team, because usually a lot of team, when they go on the road, they usually do their counter-attacking thing because they know that they're not going to have the majority of the ball. And since Vancouver is set up to be like that, that's why they always tend to be good on the road. But I feel like Columbus, with the momentum that they had and with the good start they have to begin the season, I have a feeling that they can get another win in this one against Vancouver. But yeah, next up, Chicago versus Portland, also known as the Desperation Derby. And the reason why I say this is the Desperation Derby is because both of these teams are in a pretty bad situation right now. Chicago 0-2. They lost to Minnesota a couple of weeks ago, while Portland drew 1-1 against Dallas, which, it was a pretty good result for them considering the fact that they were down to 10 men for the last 15 minutes of the game. But still, Portland is 0-1-2, and they still haven't got a win in this. They only got a point out of their first 3 games, and Chicago obviously losing to Minnesota is definitely a very tough loss to swallow, and both of these teams are desperate for wins, and it's going to be interesting to see who will definitely get it. A win will definitely really help one of these two teams, and if this game ends in a draw, then it's not going to help anybody at all. Well, maybe Portland. Maybe Portland getting a draw, might not be the worst thing because they got a road point, which is always important in MLS. But I really think that both of these teams really need a win just to try to get their season kind of back on track, because both of these teams last year was very good, and although there was some downgrade for the Chicago Fire with David Accam leaving, and I don't think these 2 losses they have, I don't really think is the reason why David Accam left, is the reason why they started struggling. I think it has something to do with the injury of Chicago, which is another thing that I kind of haven't mentioned a lot, but the Fire has a lot of injury to deal with. And for Portland, it's going to be interesting to see the fact that they're getting back their attacker, they're getting back Andy Polo, and also, who was the other international that they're getting back? I forgot who it is. But they're definitely getting most of their attack back, and they also gonna get a healthy Diego Chara to pretty much play 100% in this game after he played in the last game against FC Dallas. So, like I said, this is a desperation derby. Both of these teams really need a win to try to get their season back on track and try to get their season kicking off. Next up, Minnesota versus Atlanta. Last time that this game happened in Minnesota, Atlanta absolutely destroyed the Loons 6-1 in the Snow Classico, pretty much. I mean, it was just crazy. The fact that Atlanta just put a 6 spot against a Minnesota team that were doing their home opener, and that must be depressing for Minnesota. I mean, to have your home opener and have your debut home opener in MLS and lose 6-1 to your fellow expansion side, yeah, that's going to be pretty painful. And I think this one is going to be no different. Atlanta is started to get back on track. You know, the last 2 games, they certainly showed that Atlanta side that they were just last season. And for Minnesota, you know, reality kind of start to set them in that Red Bulls game, where it's pretty clear that when you have guys that have no name with them, and guys that is not very good, and also a very leaky defense, that of course can happen. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how this one's gonna go. But I really think that Atlanta is going to win this game. I think, you know, I don't know how Minnesota is going to handle that really stellar Atlanta front three that looks like they're back on track and looks like they mean business again after they suffer that shock opening weekend loss against Houston. But yeah, next up, this game, I'm not going to talk a lot about this game, but because I just sort of mentioned it in a match preview, which I have already uploaded. So if you want more information about this game, then watch my match preview. But basically, it's a very tough game for us. I don't think that we are going to just give up 1 goal in this. If we just give up 1 goal against NYCFC, against that big 4 of NYCFC, it will be an absolute miracle. But I really think that we really need to score a lot of goals in this if we have any chance to get a result. And we definitely can do that. I mean, our attack is certainly much better than what it was a couple of years ago. And right now, the only problem we have so far is that our defense does not look like what it used to be. So we started to be more kind of like aiming toward the attacking kind of side, even though our head coach Michael Starhay is kind of a defensive kind of coach. And for NYCFC, you know, this is a good opportunity to get another win, even though it's on the road. And they also get David Villa back, although Alex Rain, their midfielder, will be out for 4 to 6 weeks, so that's a little bit of a knock. And also the fact that they're going to get Rodney Harris back in this game after he came back from international duty. So yeah, they're gonna get their big 4 back for this game, and I am just shitting myself when I see them play against our defense. I mean, we are just gonna get absolutely torched. I just have a feeling that's gonna happen. But yeah, next up, Sporting KC versus DC United. Sporting KC got a 2-2 draw against Colorado. They came back after going down 2-0 against the Rapids. Well, DC United lost 3-1 to Columbus, and I think this one is probably going to be straightforward. I think Sporting KC is going to win this one. You know, they didn't have a good game against the Rapids, but they still escaped there with a point. And they're playing against a DC United team that is pretty low in confidence. I mean, this DC United team looked to be one of the worst team in the Eastern Conference and also in the league. So I expect nothing different. I think Sporting KC should win this game pretty easily. But yeah. Either way, next up, Houston versus the New England Revolution. Houston drew 2-2 against DC United, but that was a couple of weeks ago. Well, New England pulled off an impressive kind of draw against NYCFC, and I think impressive might not be the right word to say. I think probably the right word to describe that game was misfortunate and just unlucky, because New England were definitely the better team in that game against NYCFC, and they should have won that game. But now they got a very sticky situation as they go to Houston, and this one is going to be another one that I think is going to be pretty straightforward. Also, I think Houston should win this one. They are very good at home. They're pretty much unstoppable at home. I mean, they did lose to Vancouver this season at home, but Vancouver is just one of those teams that is just really good on the road, and I just don't see how New England can repeat that good performance against NYCFC, against this Houston team. I mean, it's going to be really tough to do it. The Revs are also not very good on the road. So, yeah, I think Houston should win this, and should definitely trying to shake off that sort of missed opportunity that they had against DC United, where they should have probably got all 3 points in that one after blowing a 2-0 lead and also conceding a last-minute equalizer. But yeah, next up, Colorado versus Philly. Colorado, of course, another team that were very misfortunate. The fact that they drew against Sporting KC, a pretty big team, and just like Houston a couple of weeks ago when they were up 2-0 against DC United and eventually blew it, in the end, Colorado did the same thing. And just like how Houston blew their 2-0 lead and giving up a late equalizer in stoppage time, Colorado did the same thing. They literally give up a goal deep into stoppage time. Well, actually, it wasn't deep into stoppage time. It was like the 91st minute. And that is certainly just, it feels really painful for Rapids fans to deal with that moment, because they should have clearly got the 3 points against Sporting KC. Well, Philadelphia, they drew against Columbus a couple of weeks ago. I think the Union hasn't, it feels like the Union haven't played in like a long time now, but the Union are definitely a team that certainly, I think so far, are not really as bad as what we kind of thought. I mean, we know that they kind of got an upgrade with David Accam being on their team, but it feels like right now, even with that upgrade, they just feel like they look definitely much better than they kind of was a couple of years, well, not a couple of years ago, but what many people kind of thought they would be coming into this season. And I think that's a good sign for the Union, and certainly, you know, if the Union can have a pretty good season and compete into that last spot in the Eastern Conference, then I think it's definitely a successful season for them. And they have a chance to get something out of this against Colorado. And Colorado is not a very kind of strong team. So, yeah, this is an interesting one to see, because both of these teams are teams that you would not expect them to do very well. But if one of them, of course, get a win, if Philly gets a win, then they are now 2-1-0. And they are one of those teams that is remain undefeated. And how many people would imagine that the Union would be undefeated coming into April? I mean, I'm pretty sure not a lot of people would thought of that. But yeah, either way, last game of this video, Seattle versus Montreal. Seattle haven't got a single point throughout this season, as they lose 3-0 to FC Dallas a couple of weeks ago, while Montreal got a massive and probably an emotional 1-0 win against TFC, and a very hard-fought 1-0 win against TFC. And I'll tell you what, Montreal is kind of like Philly pretty much, except I think Montreal should definitely have got more recognition after that TFC win, because it feels like this team, certainly, even though they are below 500, this team certainly did not look like a 500 team. This team looked a pretty good team to watch, and some of their youngsters so far this season have looked pretty well so far this season. And for the Sounders, the good news is they do get a couple of guys back from injury. Ladero, I heard, is going to be back in this game after he was able to train with the Sounders for the first time. And Will Bruin, their backup striker, is back with the squad. So they are going to get some guys that has suffered injuries throughout these last couple of weeks back in this game. But the bad news for the Sounders is that they're not going to have Clint Dempsey, because Clint Dempsey got sent off in that FC Dallas game, and he's serving a 1-game suspension. So that's certainly going to be interesting to see how the Seattle play without a striker, which is kind of like the story so far for the Sounders. I mean, the Sounders right now, it's been just for them. Sounders fan must be frustrated the fact that they are nowhere near of getting a striker right now, because it's pretty clear that they really need a striker right now. Ever since Jordan Morris kind of went down, they only have like one true striker, which is Clint Dempsey. But other than that, they just don't have any other reliable option, and I'm surprised they haven't thought about potentially getting a striker very soon. And for Seattle, now the fact that they don't have CCL anymore, and the fact that they're getting a couple of guys back from injury, you got to say that they should start winning some games. I mean, if they're going to avoid any hope of another bad start to the season like they have been recently, then they got to get something from this game against Montreal. And I really think it's not going to be very, very easy for them to do it, because like I said, Montreal have definitely looked very impressive. Even in those losses, they have looked very impressive, and the Seattle team just looked nothing and nowhere near as good as they were when they made that MLS Cup run 1 year ago, and also when they won the whole thing 2 years ago. So yeah, this should be a very interesting one to see. Hopefully I can catch most of this, and also probably a little bit of this. I'm definitely not going to catch this one, this one, and this one, and this one also. I think this is a 3 o'clock kickoff. But yeah, that of course is my match preview done and dusted. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of all these games? Leave a comments for the prediction of all 11 of this game. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.